The night started like hundreds of others. I had been driving for nearly 9 hours already, hauling a refrigerated trailer across a stretch of highway that cut through miles of forest and empty farmland. It was one of those long overnight routes where the road feels endless and the world outside the windshield fades into darkness. Just asphalt, headlights, and the steady hum of the engine. My name's Mark, and I've been a long-haul truck driver for almost 12 years. When you spend that much time on the road, you get used to strange things. Empty highways. Flickering rest stops. Radios that pick up static from nowhere. But what happened that night was something different. Something I still don't understand. It was just after midnight when the fog started rolling in. At first it was thin, barely noticeable. Just a pale mist hugging the edges of the road. But within minutes it thickened, spreading across the asphalt until my headlights barely cut through it. The world outside my cab became a tunnel of gray. I slowed the truck slightly and glanced at the GPS mounted beside the dashboard. The route was simple, another 50 miles straight down Highway 17 before the next town. Then the screen flickered. For a moment the map froze. The blue route line disappeared, then reappeared, but now it showed a different path. A turn coming up in less than half a mile. That didn't make sense. I'd driven this route dozens of times. There was no turn there. Just forest and a long stretch of road. The GPS voice chimed calmly. Turn right in 500 feet. I frowned and tapped the screen, trying to zoom out. The signal bars flickered. The map jipped. Something about that didn't feel right. I glanced back at the GPS. The blue route line still stretched ahead. Another 10 miles. Then I saw the third car. And the fourth. And the fifth. Some were burned black, their frames twisted beyond recognition. Others looked newer, as if the crashes had happened recently. A few were upside down in the ditches. Every single one looked like it had been involved in a violent accident. And every single one was empty. No drivers. No bodies. Nothing. Just abandoned vehicles scattered along the roadside like someone had lined them up there. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I slowed the truck to almost a crawl. The fog outside thickened even more, swallowing the road ahead. The headlights bounced off the mist and reflected back into my eyes. The silence inside the cab felt suffocating. Then something strange happened. My radio turned on by itself. A burst of static exploded through the speakers, making me jump. I reached for the dial, trying to turn it off, but the static didn't stop. It got louder. Then beneath the static, I heard something. Voices. Dozens of them. Faint. Whispering. And every one of them sounded like they were trying to say the same thing. Don't stop. The words repeated again and again under the crackling noise. My heart started pounding. I twisted the knob harder. The radio finally cut out. Silence returned. But when I looked back at the road ahead, the fog shifted. And for a split second, in the far distance, standing in the middle of the road, I thought I saw someone. The figure stood there for only a moment. At least, I think it did. It was hard to tell through the fog. My headlights barely reached far enough to illuminate the center of the road, and whatever I had seen was farther than that. Just a shape. Tall. Motionless. I leaned forward slightly, squinting through the windshield. Nothing. The road was empty again. For a few seconds I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. Long nights on the road do that to you. Your brain starts filling in shapes where there are none. Shadows turn into people. Reflections become movement. Still, the feeling in my chest didn't go away. I pressed the accelerator gently and kept moving. The truck crawled forward through the fog. A few hundred yards later I passed another wreck. This one made the hair on my arm stand up. It was a semi-truck. The same kind I was driving. The trailer had jackknifed across the road, blocking half the lane. The cab twisted at an unnatural angle like something had grabbed it and bent it sideways. The windshield was shattered completely. I slowed down almost to a stop as I passed it. The company logo on the side of the trailer had faded from weather, but the truck itself didn't look that old. Maybe 5 years. Maybe less. The driver's door hung open. The interior light flickered weakly. And just like the others. No driver. No blood. No sign that anyone had ever been there. I stared at it as I rolled past, my stomach tightening. Truckers don't just disappear from wrecks like that. If there's a crash, there are investigators, tow crews, police. The road gets closed for hours. But here? Nothing. Just wreck after wreck after wreck. The road continued winding through the forest, and the fog only got thicker. Then something else caught my eye. Lights. At first I thought it was another car approaching. 2 faint white beams shining through the mist far ahead. But they weren't moving. They stayed in the same place. As I got closer, I realized what it was. Another car. Its headlights were still on. The vehicle sat at an angle near the edge of the road, the front crushed against a tree. Steam drifted slowly from under the hood. But what made my stomach twist was the fact that the engine was still running. The headlights burned bright. Which meant the crash couldn't have happened that long ago. I slowed the truck to a stop about 30 feet away. For a moment I just sat there, staring at the car through the windshield. The fog moved slowly around it, curling through the beams of light. The driver's door was closed. The windows were fogged up from the inside. My first thought was that someone might still be in there. Injured. Trapped. Truckers help each other out on the road all the time. If someone's hurt, you stop. But something about the silence out there made me hesitate. Still, I couldn't just drive away. I grabbed my flashlight from the passenger seat and stepped down from the cab. The cold air hit me immediately. The fog was thicker outside than it looked from the truck. It clung to everything, damp and heavy, muffling sound. Even the engine of my truck seemed quieter. My boots crunched softly on the gravel as I walked toward the crashed car. The headlights lit the road in front of me, casting long distorted shadows behind my legs. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. There were no skid marks. None at all. If the driver had hit the brakes before crashing into the tree, there should have been marks on the asphalt. But the road surface was perfectly clean. Like the car had simply appeared there, already crashed. I moved around to the driver's side window and raised the flashlight. The beam cut through the fogged glass. The driver's seat was empty. Seatbelt hanging loose. The airbag deployed. No one inside. But the engine was still idling softly. My heart began beating faster. I slowly reached for the door handle. For a moment I just stood there with my hand hovering over it. Something deep in my gut was screaming not to open that door. But curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the handle. The door creaked open. The interior smelled wrong. Not like smoke or gasoline. Just stale air. Like a room that had been sealed for years. The dashboard lights flickered faintly. Keys still in the ignition. The radio whispered with faint static. I shined the flashlight around the interior. Empty. Completely empty. Then I noticed the phone. It sat on the passenger seat, screen still glowing. I reached in and picked it up. The display showed a GPS map. But the map wasn't loading properly. Instead of streets or towns, the screen was filled with a blank gray background. Except for one thing. a tiny blue dot, moving slowly along a thin road. The road curved through empty space. And at the top of the screen was a label. A street name. I felt the blood drain from my face when I read it. It said, "Last route." A cold chill ran down my spine. That's when I heard something behind me. A sound that didn't belong there. Footsteps. Soft. Slow. Walking somewhere in the fog, behind my truck. I froze. The forest had been completely silent the entire time I'd been there. But now I could hear it clearly. Crunch. 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 Someone, or something, was walking on the road. And it was getting closer. I slowly turned my head toward the sound. Crunch. Another step. The fog swallowed everything beyond 20 or 30 feet. My truck sat there with its headlights cutting a tunnel through the mist, but the light didn't reach far enough to show what was making the noise. For a moment I told myself it had to be another driver. Maybe someone from one of the wrecks. Maybe someone had been wandering the road this whole time. "Hey!" I called out. My voice sounded strange in the fog, muffled and flat. "Hello?" The footsteps stopped. Complete silence returned. I stood there beside the crashed car, holding the phone in one hand and the flashlight in the other. My breath hung in the cold air. "Are you hurt?" I tried again. "I've got a truck back here." Nothing. Not even the sound of wind. Just fog. I swallowed and stepped away from the car, turning the flashlight toward the road behind me. The beam cut through the mist. Empty. The only thing visible was my truck and the faint shapes of more wrecked vehicles farther back along the shoulder. Then, crunch. A step. But this time it wasn't behind me. It was somewhere to my right. Closer. I swung the flashlight toward the trees lining the road. Branches. Wet leaves. Fog drifting between trunks. And then, something moved. Just for a split second. A shape slipping between the trees. Tall. Too tall. My chest tightened. "Who's there?" I said. No answer. Another movement deeper in the forest. Something pacing slowly between the trees. But I still couldn't see it clearly. The fog seemed thicker there, almost like it was gathering around whatever was moving. I felt an overwhelming urge to get back into my truck. Right now. Before something worse happened. I turned quickly and started walking back toward the cab. My boots crunched faster now. Halfway there, the footsteps started again. Crunch. 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 Only now they were matching my pace. Not behind me. Not ahead of me. Beside me. Somewhere out in the fog to my right, just beyond what my flashlight could reach. Walking with me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Listen," I said, my voice shaky now. "If this is some kind of joke." Crunch. One step. Right at the edge of the fog. I lifted the flashlight slowly. The beam trembled slightly in my hand. And for the first time, I saw it. Not clearly. Just the outline. A figure standing on the shoulder of the road. At least 7 feet tall. Maybe more. Its body looked wrong somehow. Too thin. The arms hung low, almost to its knees. And its head. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Like a mannequin that had been twisted too far. I couldn't see a face. The fog covered it. But I could feel something staring at me. Watching. Waiting. Every instinct in my body screamed one thing. Run. I turned and rushed toward the truck. The footsteps exploded into motion behind me. Fast. Much faster than before. Crunch, 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 crunch. I grabbed the handle and pulled myself up into the cab, slamming the door shut behind me. The entire truck shook slightly as something heavy struck the side. Thud. My heart nearly stopped. The metal door rattled. Something dragged along the outside of the truck. A long scratching sound running across the cab. Screech. I didn't look. I couldn't. I shoved the truck into gear and slammed the accelerator. The engine roared. The wheel spun for a second before gripping the wet pavement. The truck lurched forward. In the side mirror I caught a glimpse of something tall standing in the fog beside the road, watching me leave. Then it vanished. The road stretched ahead, winding deeper into the forest. I drove faster. 70. 71. 90 kilometers an hour. The fog didn't thin. If anything, it got worse. More wrecks appeared along the sides of the road. Cars. SUVs. Another truck. Every single one destroyed. Every single one empty. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The wrecks were getting newer. The first ones I'd passed looked old. Rusty. Covered in moss. But these looked fresh. Paint still clean. Glass still glittering on the asphalt. Like the crashes had happened recently. Very recently. Then the GPS on my dashboard flickered. I glanced down at it. The map had changed. It wasn't showing my delivery route anymore. Instead, there was only that same thin gray road stretching forward through empty space. And the label appeared again. Last route. My truck was the blue dot, moving slowly along the line. Then another dot appeared behind me. Red. Following the same road. My grip on the wheel tightened. The red dot moved faster, closing the distance. I glanced in the mirror. The fog swallowed everything. Nothing there. But the red dot kept moving closer. 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 Until it was almost touching mine. That's when something hit the back of the trailer. Hard. The entire truck jerked forward. Boom. The mirrors vibrated violently. Something was back there. Something big. Something running behind the truck, keeping up with it. I pushed the accelerator all the way down. The engine screamed. 100. 101. 102. The truck rattled as it sped through the fog. Another impact slammed into the trailer. Boom. Then another. Boom. Like something was climbing onto it. I looked at the GPS again. The red dot had merged with mine. And the screen displayed a new message. A single line of text slowly appearing across the map. You should not have stopped. Behind me, something began dragging itself across the roof of the trailer. Slow. Heavy. Moving toward the cab. And then, something tapped on the roof above my head. 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 The truck rolled deeper into the fog, the tires humming against the strange, cracked asphalt. Daniel tried to steady his breathing. He had driven for nearly 15 years, across deserts, mountains, frozen highways, and empty backroads, but something about this road felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. The fog ahead swallowed the headlights like a living thing. Another car appeared on the shoulder. This one was a small white sedan. The entire front end was crushed as if it had slammed headfirst into something immovable. The windshield was shattered, spiderweb cracks spreading across the glass. Daniel slowed again. The driver's door was open. He leaned forward, squinting. No one inside. The interior light flickered faintly, illuminating an empty seat. The truck passed slowly, and for a second Daniel thought he saw something move in the rearview mirror. He quickly looked back. Nothing. Just fog. He swallowed hard and kept driving. A mile later he passed another vehicle. Then another. Some were old. Some looked relatively new. A pickup truck with its bed twisted sideways. A delivery van with both doors hanging open. A motorcycle lying on its side, rust beginning to eat away at the metal. Every single one looked like it had been in an accident. And every single one was empty. Daniel's stomach tightened. This isn't normal, he muttered to himself. He glanced down at his GPS again. Still blank. Just a gray background and a tiny arrow that seemed to float in nowhere. He grabbed his phone. No signal. The road curved gently through the fog, disappearing into pale white nothingness. Then something else caught his eye. Lights. Far ahead. At first he felt relief wash over him. Another vehicle. Maybe someone else was out here. Maybe someone could explain where the hell this road was. But as he got closer, the relief faded. The lights weren't moving. They were just sitting there in the middle of the road. Two dim yellow headlights glowing through the fog. Daniel slowed the truck. The shape slowly revealed itself. An old station wagon. Its headlights were on, but the car wasn't running. It sat crooked across the lane, angled as if it had spun out. Daniel brought the truck to a stop about 20 meters away. The engine idled loudly in the silence. The fog moved slowly around the car like smoke. He waited. Nothing happened. No movement. No one stepping out. He turned on his high beams. The bright light illuminated the vehicle fully. The front bumper was crushed inward. The hood bent upward like folded paper. But the strangest part. The driver's seat. Empty. Daniel felt his skin prickle. The headlights of the station wagon suddenly flickered. Once. Twice. Then they went dark. The fog thickened around the vehicle as if it had swallowed the last of the light. Daniel gripped the steering wheel. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, this is getting weird." He leaned forward again. And then something made his heart stop. In the passenger seat. For just a split second. He thought he saw someone sitting there. A shape. Dark. Still. Then the fog shifted and the seat looked empty again. Daniel blinked hard. "Just the fog," he said under his breath. But his voice sounded unsure. He didn't want to get out of the truck. Every instinct told him that would be a terrible idea. Instead he slowly steered the truck around the station wagon. As he passed it, he couldn't help himself. He glanced sideways. The passenger seat was empty. But the back seat. Something moved. Daniel slammed the gas. The truck surged forward down the road, engine roaring. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The fog ahead thickened again, swallowing the road. Then the radio crackled. Daniel jumped. The radio had been silent the entire time. Static filled the cabin. Then a voice whispered through the speakers. So faint he almost missed it. "Turn around." Daniel froze. The whisper came again. "Turn around." His hands tightened around the steering wheel. "I'm not stopping," he muttered. The radio hissed again. Then louder. "Turn around." Daniel reached over and shut the radio off. Silence returned. But now he had the horrible feeling that something was behind him. Watching. Following. He looked into the rearview mirror. At first he saw only fog. Then shapes began to appear behind him on the road. Headlights. Dozens of them. Cars. Old cars. New cars. Every one of them with broken frames and crushed metal. They were rolling slowly down the highway. Not driving. Rolling. As if pushed by something unseen. Daniel's blood ran cold. And then he realized something worse. Every driver's seat was empty. But in the passenger seats, figures sat perfectly still, staring forward into the fog. Daniel's chest tightened as he stared at the rearview mirror. The convoy of ruined cars behind him moved slowly through the fog like ghosts drifting along the highway. Their broken headlights flickered weakly, beams cutting through the mist in thin, trembling lines. None of them were being driven. Not one. Yet they kept rolling forward, keeping the same distance from his truck. Daniel pressed harder on the gas. The engine roared as the semi gained speed, climbing past 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. The road stretched endlessly ahead. Still no signs. No exits. No lights. Just fog and cracked asphalt. He glanced in the mirror again. The cars were still there. Still rolling. Still following. A cold sweat ran down the back of his neck. How was that even possible, he whispered. Then something inside one of the cars moved. Daniel leaned closer to the mirror. The closest vehicle was a black pickup truck. Its windshield was shattered and the hood was folded upward like a crushed soda can. The driver's seat was empty. But the passenger seat, someone was sitting there. The figure was barely visible through the broken glass. Its head slowly turned. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The thing in the passenger seat was looking directly at him. Even from this distance, he could feel it. Watching him. The truck's headlights flickered. Then suddenly, another car appeared ahead. Daniel slammed the brakes slightly and slowed. It sat half off the road, nose buried in the dirt shoulder. An old police cruiser. Its red and blue lights were still spinning weakly through the fog, casting dull colors across the empty highway. Daniel's heart pounded. Okay, maybe someone's here, he said. He pulled closer. The cruiser looked ancient, rust spreading across the doors. The windshield was cracked and one of the tires had completely collapsed. But the emergency lights still turned slowly. Red. Blue. Red. Blue. Daniel leaned toward the window, trying to see inside. The driver's seat. Empty. Of course. But then the radio inside the cruiser suddenly burst with static. The sound echoed faintly through the fog. Daniel's own truck radio turned on by itself. Static filled the cabin again. Then a distorted voice cut through. Unit 12, road not on map, repeat, road not on map. Daniel's breathing stopped. The voice continued. Multiple vehicles, no occupants, something following. The signal crackled violently. Then the voice came back, louder this time. Panicked. Do not stop. Do not let them get in the vehicle. Daniel's pulse slammed in his ears. The radio shrieked with static. Then one final message came through. The passengers are not human. The radio died. Complete silence. Daniel looked into the mirror again. The cars behind him were closer now. Much closer. And now he could see the figures more clearly. Every passenger seat was occupied. Pale shapes sitting perfectly upright. Not moving. Not blinking. Just staring forward. Then one of them raised its hand slowly. And tapped on the inside of the window. The sound echoed faintly across the empty road. Tap. 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 Daniel's hands trembled on the steering wheel. That's impossible. But then something made his blood freeze. He heard the same sound again. Tap. 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 Not from outside. From inside the truck. Behind him. Daniel's entire body locked up. Very slowly. He looked toward the passenger seat. Empty. The tapping came again. From the back of the cab. 3 slow knocks. Tap. 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 Daniel's breathing turned shallow. His truck only had a small sleeper compartment behind the seats. A dark space just large enough for a narrow bed. He had been alone the entire night. He knew that. He was certain. But the tapping came again. Closer this time. Tap. 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 Then the mattress behind him slowly creaked. Like someone shifting their weight. Daniel felt every muscle in his body tighten. He didn't want to look. Every instinct told him not to turn around. But he couldn't stop himself. Very slowly. He turned his head. The darkness inside the sleeper seemed thicker than the fog outside. At first he saw nothing. Just shadows. Then something moved. A pale hand slowly slid over the edge of the mattress. Long fingers. Thin. Too thin. They curled slowly over the edge like they were testing the air. Daniel's heart felt like it might explode. Then the rest of it leaned forward. A shape rising slowly from the darkness behind him. And a voice whispered right next to his ear. "You shouldn't have taken this road." Daniel's entire body went numb. The whisper had come from so close that he felt warm breath brush the side of his ear. For a moment he couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The truck continued rolling forward through the fog, engine rumbling beneath him, headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the white emptiness. Very slowly. Daniel forced his eyes toward the rearview mirror again. The line of wrecked cars was still there. But now they were closer. Much closer. And the figures in the passenger seats were no longer sitting still. They were moving. Their heads tilted slowly in unnatural angles, as if trying to study him. Watching. Learning. The tapping sound came again from behind him. Tap. 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 Daniel's hands trembled violently as he gripped the steering wheel. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself. "Just drive. Just keep driving." The thing behind him shifted again. The mattress creaked softly. Then the whisper came again. Low. Dry. Right beside his ear. "Everyone who drives here brings someone with them." Daniel slammed his foot on the gas. The truck roared as it accelerated again, the engine pushing the heavy vehicle faster down the empty highway. He refused to look back. If he didn't see it, maybe it wouldn't be there. But the presence behind him didn't go away. He could feel it. The air inside the cab felt colder. Colder than it should have been. His breath began to fog slightly in front of his face. The road suddenly dipped downward, disappearing deeper into the fog. Then something appeared ahead. A sign. The first sign he had seen since entering the road. Daniel leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. The sign was old. Rusty. Barely standing upright beside the highway. His headlights illuminated the faded letters as he approached. "Welcome back." Daniel's stomach dropped. Back? Back where? He had never been here before. At least, he didn't think he had. The whisper behind him spoke again. Most drivers don't remember the first time. Daniel's skin crawled. The voice wasn't just whispering now. It sounded amused. Daniel clenched his jaw and focused on the road. More wrecked cars lined the shoulders now. Hundreds of them. Old trucks. Sedans. Motorcycles. Even a bus lying on its side. windows shattered. And every single vehicle was empty in the driver's seat, but filled in the passenger seat. The figures inside them now stared directly at his truck as he passed, their pale faces barely visible through the fog. Some of them pressed their hands against the glass, watching him drive by, waiting. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. Then the voice behind him spoke again. "Do you want to know why the seats are empty?" Daniel didn't answer. The thing behind him continued. "Because eventually, every driver stops." A cold shiver ran down his spine. The road ahead began to curve slowly. And in the distance, Daniel saw something that made his blood run cold. A massive pile of wrecked vehicles. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Cars stacked on top of each other like twisted metal bones. It completely blocked the highway. There was no way around it. Daniel's pulse exploded. No, 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 no. The truck sped toward the wall of wreckage. He checked the mirror again. The convoy of ghost cars behind him was closing in, slowly surrounding him, trapping him between them. The whisper behind him came again. Gentle. Almost comforting. "The road always ends here." Daniel gritted his teeth. His mind raced. There had to be a way out. There had to be something he was missing. Then he noticed something strange. Between the wrecked cars ahead, there was a narrow gap, barely wide enough for a semi. Daniel didn't hesitate. He jerked the steering wheel and aimed the truck straight toward the opening. The engine screamed as he pushed the truck to its limit. The wrecked vehicles loomed closer. Metal. Broken glass. Twisted frames. The whisper behind him turned sharp. "You can't leave." Daniel ignored it. The truck thundered forward. Closer. Closer. The gap looked impossibly small now. But he didn't slow down. Hold together," he muttered to the truck. The vehicles on both sides rushed past his mirrors with inches to spare. Metal scraped loudly along the trailer. Sparks flew into the fog. The whisper behind him suddenly screamed. A horrible inhuman sound that filled the cab. "Stop." Daniel pushed harder on the gas. The truck burst through the narrow passage. And suddenly the fog vanished. The road exploded into clear night air. Daniel's headlights illuminated a normal highway stretching through dark hills. Real road signs. Real lane markings. No wrecked cars. No fog. Just empty asphalt beneath a sky full of stars. Daniel slammed the brakes and brought the truck to a shaking stop. His chest heaved as he gasped for air. For a long time he didn't move. Didn't look back. Finally, very slowly, he turned his head toward the sleeper behind him. The compartment was empty. The mattress was flat. No pale hands. No shadow. Nothing. Daniel let out a long, shaky breath. He grabbed his phone. Full signal. His GPS suddenly beeped and reconnected. The map showed a completely normal highway. Route 84. Daniel laughed nervously. "Just a nightmare," he whispered. "Just exhaustion." He put the truck back in gear and continued driving. But a few minutes later, something made his stomach twist. A soft sound. From the passenger seat. Daniel slowly turned his head. The seatbelt there had slowly pulled tight. As if someone had just leaned back into the chair. Then a faint whisper filled the cab. Barely louder than breath. "Thanks for the ride." Daniel's hands froze on the steering wheel. The truck continued moving forward, tires humming steadily on the asphalt, but inside the cab the air felt suddenly heavy. For several seconds he didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. The passenger seat looked completely empty. The seatbelt, however, was stretched tight. Like someone was leaning back in it. Daniel swallowed slowly. No, he whispered to himself. No, that didn't happen. He forced his eyes back to the road. The highway ahead was normal. Clear. Peaceful. Just a long stretch of asphalt cutting through dark hills and pine trees. The stars above were bright, and the moon hung low over the horizon. Nothing about it looked strange. Nothing about it looked like the nightmare road he had just escaped. His GPS beeped softly again. Continue for 82 miles. Daniel exhaled slowly. Good, he muttered. Just keep driving. He tried to convince himself everything was fine. But the silence in the cab felt wrong. Too quiet. Like the truck was holding its breath. Then something shifted beside him. The seatbelt creaked. Daniel's eyes slowly moved to the passenger seat again. The belt moved slightly. Tightening. As if something invisible had adjusted its position. His pulse began pounding again. You're not real, Daniel said under his breath. The truck radio suddenly clicked on. Static crackled through the speakers. Daniel didn't touch it. The volume slowly increased on its own. Then the static began to change. Whispers. Hundreds of them. Soft overlapping voices speaking all at once. Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel. What the hell? The whispers grew clearer. Different voices. Different ages. Men. Women. Some of them crying. Some of them begging. Some of them laughing quietly. And every single voice repeated the same sentence. We couldn't leave. Daniel's chest tightened. The passenger seat shifted again. The seatbelt pulled tighter. Then the whispers stopped all at once. Complete silence filled the cab. A new voice spoke through the radio. Calm. Close. Too close. You left them behind. Daniel's stomach dropped. Left who? He whispered. The radio crackled. The drivers. Daniel glanced quickly in the rearview mirror. The highway behind him was empty. No fog. No broken cars. No ghost convoy. Just darkness. He looked forward again. Then it's over, he said. But the radio voice replied immediately. No. The passenger seat slowly creaked again. Daniel could feel something beside him now. A presence. Not touching him. But close enough that the air felt colder on that side of his body. Then the voice whispered beside him again. Not from the radio this time. Right next to his ear. The road isn't finished with you. Daniel's heart pounded violently. He slammed the radio off. Silence returned. For a moment nothing happened. Then headlights appeared far ahead on the road. A truck. Driving toward him in the opposite lane. Relief washed over him. Finally. Another person. Another real human being. The approaching truck flashed its lights twice. Daniel blinked. Then he realized something strange. The truck wasn't slowing down. And it wasn't staying in its lane. It was drifting slowly toward the center of the highway. Daniel frowned. What's this guy doing? The truck got closer. Closer. Daniel could now see the driver through the windshield. Or at least, he thought he could. The seat looked empty. His heart skipped a beat. The truck swerved suddenly. Straight into Daniel's lane. Daniel reacted instantly, jerking the wheel to the right. The semi roared as it veered onto the shoulder. The oncoming truck blasted past him with a deafening rush of air. Daniel wrestled the steering wheel and managed to bring the semi back onto the road. His breathing came in sharp gasps. What the hell was that? He looked into the side mirror as the other truck disappeared behind him. For a moment everything looked normal. Then something moved in the mirror. A pale face. Sitting in the passenger seat of that truck. Watching him. Daniel's stomach twisted. He turned forward again quickly. The road ahead was empty once more. But now the passenger seat beside him slowly made a soft creaking sound. Then the seatbelt clicked, tightening one more notch. And the whisper came again. Soft. Satisfied. You found the road again. Daniel's fingers slowly loosened and tightened around the steering wheel as the words settled into his mind. You found the road again. The whisper had sounded calm. Almost pleased. The truck engine rumbled steadily beneath him, the vibration traveling up through the pedals and into his legs. Outside, the highway stretched into darkness, illuminated only by the long tunnel of his headlights. For several miles nothing happened. No other cars. No strange lights. No whispers. Daniel tried to convince himself it was over. Maybe the thing beside him had left. Maybe whatever that road was, he had escaped it. But the passenger seat still felt occupied. The seatbelt remained stretched tight. And every few seconds the leather seat creaked quietly, as if something invisible was shifting its weight. Daniel forced himself to keep his eyes on the road. You're not real, he whispered again. No answer. The silence felt heavier now. Then the GPS suddenly beeped again. Daniel glanced down. The screen flickered once. Then twice. The map zoomed out on its own. The highway line stretched across the screen like a thin white thread. And then something appeared on the map that hadn't been there before. A road branching off ahead. No number. No name. Just a thin gray line. Daniel frowned. That wasn't there a second ago. The GPS voice spoke. Turn right in 1 mile. Daniel shook his head. No. The road ahead remained straight and empty. But the GPS repeated the instruction. Turn right in 1 mile. Daniel gripped the wheel harder. I'm not turning anywhere. The passenger seat creaked again. Then the whisper came back. You always do. Daniel ignored it. The GPS beeped louder. Turn right in half a mile. The temperature inside the cab suddenly dropped again. Daniel could see his breath now. Outside, the darkness ahead seemed to thicken unnaturally. Then his headlights caught something standing beside the road. A person. Daniel slammed the brakes slightly and slowed. A woman stood at the edge of the highway. She wore a long coat that moved gently in the wind. Her face was pale in the headlights. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. It was the middle of nowhere. No towns. No houses. Nothing for miles. The woman didn't move. Didn't wave. Didn't signal for help. She simply stood there, watching his truck approach. The GPS spoke again. Turn right in 300 feet. Daniel's eyes darted between the woman and the road. Then he noticed something strange. Behind the woman, there was a road. A narrow one. Barely visible. Daniel's stomach dropped. It was the same type of road. Cracked asphalt. No markings. Leading into thick fog. The woman slowly raised her arm, pointing toward it. The passenger seat shifted beside him. The whisper came again. You see it now. Daniel's heart pounded violently. No. The GPS beeped louder. Turn right now. Daniel slammed his foot on the accelerator. The engine roared as the semi blasted past the woman without slowing down. For a split second his headlights fully illuminated her face. Her eyes were completely black. And she was smiling. Daniel sped down the highway, refusing to look in the mirrors. But the GPS screen began flickering violently. The map zoomed in again. The gray road behind him remained on the screen, still connected to his route. Then the system recalculated. Recalculating route. The screen updated. A new gray road appeared ahead. Then another. And another. Branching off from the highway like cracks spreading across glass. Daniel's stomach twisted. No. The GPS voice returned. Turn right in 2 miles. The passenger seat creaked softly. The whisper beside him sounded almost patient now. You can miss one entrance. Daniel felt the cold breath near his ear again. But the road always finds another way. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears as the truck tore down the highway. The speedometer crept higher, the engine pushing harder than he normally allowed it to, but he didn't care anymore. The only thing that mattered was distance. Distance from the woman. Distance from that road. But the GPS screen continued flickering. The map zoomed out again, showing miles of highway ahead, and then those thin gray lines branching off from it like veins. Roads that hadn't existed seconds ago. One after another. Every few miles. Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his sleeve. This isn't real, he muttered. The passenger seat shifted again. The seatbelt tightened another small notch with a quiet click. Daniel refused to look at it. The GPS spoke again. Turn right in 1 mile. Daniel reached over and ripped the power cable from the GPS unit. The screen went black. Silence returned to the cab. For a few seconds, Daniel felt a small wave of relief. But then the truck's radio came to life. Static burst through the speakers again. Daniel slammed his palm against the console. No! But the radio ignored him. The static twisted into voices again. This time they weren't whispering. They were talking. Arguing. Crying. Hundreds of voices layered on top of each other like echoes trapped in a tunnel. Then one voice pushed through clearly. An older man. Tired. Broken. I missed the first exit too. Daniel's breath caught. Another voice followed. A younger one. Panicked. They kept showing up. Every road, every turn. Then another voice. A woman. They never stop. The voices grew louder. Desperate. They make you take it eventually. You get too tired. You look away for 1 second. They're waiting. Daniel felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Shut up, he whispered. The voices suddenly stopped. The radio fell silent again. Then a single calm voice came through. You're doing well. Daniel froze. That voice. It was the same one that had whispered in his ear earlier. But now it sounded different. Stronger. Clearer. Almost human. Daniel slowly turned his head. The passenger seat was still empty. But the seatbelt was stretched tight against something invisible. The leather seat cushion had a slight indentation now. As if someone was sitting there. Watching the road with him. The voice spoke again. Most drivers last an hour. Daniel stared forward, refusing to acknowledge it. You've lasted longer. The truck continued rolling down the empty highway. Then the voice said something that made Daniel's blood run cold. But you're getting tired. Daniel blinked. His eyelids did feel heavy. He hadn't slept much the previous night. And the adrenaline that had been pumping through him for the past hour was beginning to fade. No, he said. The voice beside him remained calm. Your hands are shaking. Daniel looked down. They were. Your eyes keep drifting. Daniel forced himself to blink hard. The road ahead stretched endlessly into darkness. Then headlights appeared far ahead again. Another truck. Daniel squinted. But something about the way it moved looked wrong. The truck ahead wasn't driving straight. It drifted slowly across both lanes. Like it wasn't being controlled. Daniel's pulse spiked. "Move," he whispered. The truck ahead didn't move. As he got closer, Daniel could see the cab clearly now. The driver's seat was empty. The truck rolled forward by itself. Just like the wrecked cars on the other road. Daniel swerved slightly to pass it. But as he drew alongside, he saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. A man. His face pale. Eyes wide with terror. The man turned his head slowly toward Daniel. And mouthed two words. "Don't stop." Then the empty truck suddenly jerked sideways. Directly into Daniel's lane. Daniel yanked the wheel hard. The semi skidded violently across the road. The trailer fishtailed behind him. Tires screamed against asphalt. For a moment Daniel thought the entire truck was going to flip. But somehow he regained control. The empty truck rolled past him and disappeared into the darkness behind. Daniel's heart felt like it might burst. Beside him, the invisible passenger let out a quiet sigh. "You're fighting it." Daniel's voice came out rough. "What do you want from me?" The voice answered calmly. "Nothing." A pause. Then it added softly. "The road does." Daniel gritted his teeth. "I'm not taking it." The passenger seat creaked again. The voice leaned closer. "But you will." Daniel shook his head violently. "No." The voice whispered the final words like a promise. "Everyone eventually needs to rest." Then Daniel saw it. Far ahead in the darkness. Another road. This one wasn't hidden. It was wide. Old. Cracked. And completely covered in fog. The same fog he had escaped before. It spilled slowly across the highway like smoke creeping over the asphalt. The passenger beside him whispered softly. "You're almost there." Daniel's heart pounded violently as the truck thundered down the empty highway. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to pull over and escape, but he knew that stopping was impossible. The seatbelt beside him remained taut, as if something invisible was holding him in place, and the whispering voice beside his ear had returned, low and patient. "You're almost there," it said again, almost like it was counting down. The fog ahead thickened, crawling across the highway like a living thing, swallowing the asphalt in pale, curling tendrils. The streetlights that should have marked the mile stretches were absent. Only the mist remained, pressing closer with every passing second. Daniel's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. Ahead, a vehicle appeared. At first, he thought it was a truck like the one he'd passed before. But this one wasn't moving. It hovered slightly above the road, a twisted mass of dark metal and broken glass, as if gravity itself had rejected it. Figures moved inside, or rather, between, the broken cab and passenger area, floating in impossible angles, faces pressed against the shattered windows. Daniel swallowed hard and forced himself to look away. Another whisper from the invisible passenger. "They are waiting for you." Daniel's stomach twisted. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He tried to push the thought away, tried to focus only on the road, on the asphalt that disappeared into the fog ahead. But then the sound of tires scraping metal reached his ears. Not from his truck. From behind. He dared a glance in the rearview mirror. Hundreds of vehicles now lined the road. Old, new, rusty, and freshly wrecked, each one eerily empty, yet each carrying a presence that pressed against the glass as if it could see into the cab. The passenger seats were all full. The eyes of those unseen figures glowed faintly, and some moved in jerky, unnatural motions. They were aware of him. They were following. Waiting. Judging. Daniel's hands shook uncontrollably. He pressed the accelerator harder, but the trailer fishtailed on the wet asphalt. Sparks flew as the metal scraped against the uneven shoulder. "Drive," the whisper instructed. "Don't stop." Daniel obeyed. His vision tunneled, focus narrowing only to the road ahead. Then, through the fog, a shape appeared on the asphalt. A gate. Or maybe an archway. He couldn't tell. It was shrouded in darkness, twisted with hanging vines and rusted metal. On top of it, faint letters were visible under the dim glow of his headlights. The last exit. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't want to believe what he was seeing. He slowed slightly to get a better look, but the whisper hissed beside him, "Urgent now. Do not hesitate." His truck roared again as he pushed it forward, and the air around the arch seemed to ripple. The fog thinned just enough for him to glimpse the wreckage beyond it, dozens of vehicles stacked like bones, twisted and broken, yet the road continued, narrow and inviting, leading directly through the arch. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. His hands were shaking. His mind raced. But still he drove. As the truck passed under the arch, the world changed. The fog dissolved entirely. The wrecks vanished. The forest, the twisted vehicles, the whispering passenger, everything was gone. Only the open highway remained, stretching forward under a moonlit sky. Daniel exhaled, exhausted, sweat dripping from his brow. He glanced to the passenger seat. Empty. Silent. No seatbelt tightening. No creaking. For a long moment, nothing moved. The radio was dead. The GPS worked. The road ahead was clear. Then, faintly, he heard it, a whisper carried on the wind. A single voice, barely audible, echoing from the night. "You may have survived, this time." Daniel's hands tightened around the wheel. He drove faster, the highway stretching endlessly before him. But deep down, he knew that the road was patient. The road was endless. And one day, it would find him again. Because once you've seen it, you can never truly leave. If you want, I can continue and write a full epilogue or extended ending where Daniel reflects on what he experienced, adding layers of dread, hints of future encounters, and that lingering terror that the highway will always return for him. Do you want me to do that next? Daniel didn't slow down. The truck roared beneath him, tires gripping the asphalt as if the road itself wanted him to keep moving. The night air was cold, sharper than before, cutting through his sweat-soaked clothes. His heart pounded like a hammer inside his chest, each beat echoing louder than the engine. The highway stretched endlessly, dark hills rising on either side, and though the fog was gone, the silence was oppressive. No wind, no animals, no hum of distant traffic, just the steady vibration of the truck and the soft rumble of the engine. Every nerve in his body screamed for him to stop, to pull over, to rest, but the memory of the road that wasn't on the map burned through his mind. He remembered the wrecked cars, the empty driver's seats, the pale figures with their unblinking eyes. He remembered the whispering passenger, the tightening seatbelt, the black-eyed woman at the last exit. The way the road had forced him forward, inch by inch, until he had passed through the archway into this empty, moonlit highway. Daniel forced his eyes on the road ahead. He had survived. He had made it. And yet, a part of him knew the truth, he had not escaped. Not really. The road did not let go so easily. The truck's headlights illuminated a curve ahead. Daniel eased the wheel slightly as the road wound through a narrow pass between two ridges. The shadows of the hills stretched long across the asphalt. And then he saw it. A vehicle appeared far ahead. At first, he thought it was another truck. A normal rig, perhaps a delivery van, maybe another driver who had survived the long night. But as he drew closer, the shape twisted and flickered, like heat waves above a desert highway, impossible angles forming and unforming. The tires hovered above the asphalt. The cab hung crooked, metal bending in ways that should have been impossible. Daniel's chest tightened. The vehicle drifted slowly toward him, crossing the centerline without any sign of steering. The air around it shimmered. The closer it came, the more familiar it became. Not the vehicle itself, he could not recognize it, but the feeling. The exact same dread that had crawled along his spine on the road that wasn't on the map. He passed it carefully, hugging the shoulder. The headlights revealed a glimpse inside, a passenger seat, filled with a figure. Pale, motionless, eyes fixed forward. The same as before. A whisper seemed to tickle his ear, so soft he almost didn't hear it. Every road has its shadows. Daniel swallowed. The words seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air grew colder still, and he could see his breath in front of him. The steering wheel shook beneath his hands as the truck accelerated under his control. The highway stretched ahead, smooth and endless. The lines were clear, the asphalt perfect, almost unreal. And yet, every mile he drove, Daniel felt it, an invisible pressure in the cab, in the seatbelt, in the air itself. The road remembered him. It knew him. It had not forgotten. Far ahead, another shape appeared. A faint silhouette of a figure standing on the side of the road. A man, perhaps, or a woman, Daniel could not tell. The outline shimmered, flickered in the headlights. He pressed harder on the accelerator, refusing to acknowledge the figure, refusing to stop. And then he heard it. The softest of tapping, like fingernails against metal. The seatbelt beside him clicked once, and Daniel felt the presence shift. Closer. Warmer. Not in a threatening way, not yet, but undeniably there. The radio clicked on. Static hissed, then the whisper returned. You may drive forever, but the road never forgets. Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. His hands ached. His vision blurred from fatigue. The miles rolled beneath him like an endless conveyor belt. Hills rose and fell. Shadows stretched across the highway. He saw nothing in the distance, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed on him from every direction. The whisper came again, gentler now, almost patient. You survived the first night, the first chase, the first test. But the road is eternal. And it waits for every driver who dares to wander off. It waits for you. Daniel exhaled slowly, a trembling, shuddering sound. The truck roared beneath him as he pressed onward, the highway stretching endlessly. Ahead, the moon hung low, casting silver light across the asphalt. Behind him, the night was silent. Yet he knew it was not empty. Not really. Every wreck, every whisper, every shadow, every pale figure he had seen before, they were out there. Watching. Waiting. Patient. Eternal. Daniel drove on, the miles rolling beneath the tires like a ribbon unraveling into infinity. The whisper lingered, a soft presence at his side, a constant reminder that the road was alive, and that he had only just begun its journey. No exits. No maps. No escape. Just the endless, silent road ahead. And the knowledge that one day, no matter how far he drove, the road would find him again. And the road never forgot. The miles stretched on, unbroken, under the silver light of the moon. Daniel's eyes burned from exhaustion, his vision narrowing to a thin tunnel around the truck's headlights. Every shadow along the roadside seemed to twitch, to bend unnaturally in the corner of his vision. He tried to tell himself it was fatigue, that the endless monotony of driving in the dead night was playing tricks on his senses. But deep in his chest, a cold certainty had settled, the road was still watching him. The whisper beside him had faded, leaving only the subtle tightening of the invisible seatbelt, a constant presence reminding him he was not alone. The cab felt alive. Every vibration of the truck beneath him carried a weight, a consciousness that pressed against his senses, as if the asphalt itself remembered every driver who had ever strayed onto this highway. Suddenly, the headlights illuminated something unusual in the distance. A road sign, flickering faintly under the moonlight. Daniel squinted to read it. The words were ancient, letters worn and peeling, barely legible. No return beyond this point. A shiver ran down his spine. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white. The road stretched beyond the sign into darkness, deeper and narrower than the highway he had been driving. The fog wasn't back, but a thin mist rose from the asphalt itself, curling like smoke, clinging to the tires and the wheel wells of his truck. The GPS unit, which he had turned off hours ago, clicked back on suddenly. The screen glowed faintly, displaying only a single line, a road that wasn't there before, snaking into the dark horizon. A small blinking dot appeared on it, his truck. And behind it, dozens of tiny red dots, spaced perfectly, all following him, all moving in sync. Daniel's throat tightened. He swallowed hard. The radio clicked on again, static first, then a low, gravelly whisper. Not beside him this time, it seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "You can drive forever, but you cannot leave." He pressed the accelerator harder. The truck's engine roared as if it understood his desperation, propelling him forward over the smooth asphalt. Yet the red dots on the GPS grew larger with each mile, and the road ahead began to shift. The lines of the highway twisted and warped like ribbons of metal, curving impossibly, narrowing, then widening again. Daniel's stomach churned. The horizon seemed to fold in on itself. Then the first wreck appeared. Not along the shoulder, not piled like before, directly on the road, looming out of the darkness. A bus, smashed to pieces, metal mangled, glass shattered, but the engine still running. Lights flickered inside, weak and uneven. The doors were open. And in every seat, figures sat perfectly still. Faces pale, eyes fixed forward, unblinking, staring at him. Daniel swerved instinctively, narrowly avoiding the bus. The tires screamed against the asphalt. The trailer fishtailed dangerously, but he regained control, slamming the truck back onto the warped highway. His heart pounded, sweat running down his face. The passenger seat creaked. The seatbelt pulled tight again. Daniel could feel the invisible presence leaning forward, watching, waiting. "You're not ready," the whisper said softly. But the road does not care. Ahead, another wreck emerged, a sedan, suspended in midair, tilted at an impossible angle as if gravity had forsaken it. Inside, the driver's seat was empty. But the passenger seat, a figure hunched forward, slowly raising its head to look at him. The eyes were black voids, endless and unfeeling, yet he could feel them drilling into his mind. Daniel's breathing grew ragged. His hands shook, trembling against the wheel. "I'm not stopping," he whispered. "I'm not turning back." But the road had other plans. The asphalt rippled beneath the tires, grooves and cracks forming and closing in impossible ways. A new path branched off to the right, a narrow road, darker than the night around it, lined with wrecked vehicles that seemed to reach for him. The GPS beeped violently, displaying only one instruction. "Turn now." Daniel slammed his foot down, refusing. The road ahead curved naturally, smooth and unbroken. But then the whisper beside him tightened its presence, cold and patient. "Do not deny it," it said. "The road will always claim you." The truck jolted violently, as if something under it had grabbed the tires. Sparks flew along the edge of the asphalt. The truck swayed, threatening to tip over. Daniel yanked the wheel, heart hammering, regaining control by inches. In the rearview mirror, shapes began to appear again. Not distant shadows. Not faint outlines. Figures, dozens of them, pale and unmoving, standing along the edges of the warped highway. They didn't move their feet, but their heads followed him. They reached with arms that bent in unnatural ways, fingers stretching impossibly long. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. And from the back of his cab, Daniel could hear the soft creak of the sleeper mattress, shifting as though something invisible had risen to observe him. The whispers returned, low and endless, voices layered together, chanting. "Drive, drive, the road waits, the road remembers." Daniel's vision blurred. Exhaustion pressed down on him. The lines of the highway rippled like water. Ahead, the thin gray road, the one that wasn't on any map, appeared once more, cutting straight into the horizon, promising something he didn't want but couldn't escape. He pressed the accelerator to the floor. The tires screamed, the engine roared, and the world around him twisted in impossible ways. The pale figures reached out with invisible hands. The wreck seemed to leap from the asphalt. The whispers filled every corner of the cab, every shadow, every heartbeat. Daniel drove faster. Faster than he had ever driven. The night stretched on endlessly. And yet, in the back of his mind, one thought remained, chilling and relentless. The road does not end. It only waits. And it never forgets. Daniel's body ached, every muscle screaming, but still he drove. The warped highway stretched endlessly ahead, twisting and folding under the moonlight, yet for the first time he sensed a strange clarity, an understanding of the road's terrible patience. It didn't chase recklessly. It waited. It tested. It collected those who strayed, slowly, inevitably, until they accepted it. The pale presence beside him had settled into a quiet wait. No whispers, no creaks, just the taut leather of the seatbelt pressing softly against him. He could feel it breathing, or perhaps it was the road itself, aligned with the truck's rumble, steady, unyielding. Miles passed, then hours. The highway straightened gradually. The warped asphalt smoothed. The scattered wrecks and twisted figures that had appeared so frequently now receded into faint shadows at the edges of his vision. The fog, the twisting roads, the whispers, all seemed to dissolve into memory. Finally, the first hint of dawn appeared on the horizon. Pale gold light spread across the hills, casting long, warm shadows. Daniel's hands shook as he gripped the wheel, unsure whether he was relieved or terrified. The invisible passenger beside him shifted slightly, almost approvingly, and the seatbelt loosened just enough for him to notice. The GPS, silent for hours, blinked back to life. The normal highway lines appeared, perfectly straight and familiar. Daniel exhaled, long and shuddering. The seat beside him was empty now. The whisper, if it remained, had fallen completely silent. He drove on through the early morning light, eyes scanning the horizon. The road ahead was normal. The wrecks, the figures, the endless gray paths, they were gone. And yet he knew, deep down, that the road had not let him go entirely. It had marked him. Remembered him. Every turn, every mile, every curve, he would feel it, always, in the passenger seat, in the corners of his vision, in the tightening of the seatbelt when he drove alone at night. The road waited. Patient, eternal, unyielding. Daniel's grip on the wheel loosened, but his eyes never strayed from the horizon. He was alive. He had survived. But the memory of that highway, the one that wasn't on any map, would travel with him forever. And somewhere, far behind, in the shadows where the fog and wrecks lingered, the road waited for its next traveler. It always waits. It never forgets. The truck rolled on, the sun climbing slowly in the sky, and Daniel drove, into the light, yet forever marked by the darkness of the highway that doesn't exist.